Hey dear people, today I want to talk about practicing and to start practicing again, especially if you have been playing an instrument before and maybe even had some skills on the instrument. If that's 10 years ago or 1 week ago, right, we can fall off the horse, and even if it's only 1 week ago that we practiced for the last time, it can very quickly feel like we haven't been practicing for a long time, and we feel like we can't do the things anymore that we used to play, and we'll never get those skills back. And this mindset or those thoughts that we have in our head, they become so huge and bigger with every day that we don't practice, that they sort of keep us from starting again, because we feel like we're not as competent as before, right? And we dread the feeling of sitting down and realizing maybe there's stuff that we used to play, we can't play it anymore. And then we refrain from playing because we sort of hate that feeling of, inadequacy, and like the fingers and the right hand and the left hand is not, intact, synchron, they don't work well together. And then we maybe don't practice. And if we are a complete beginner, we have maybe different problems, but when we start, we don't have this skill set, this sort of lost skill set that we think we lost, right? And we can just start learning the instrument from a fresh perspective. We don't have this baggage, right? Sometimes we have those stories in our head, why we can't play certain stuff, or how we should sound and how much we should practice so that it even makes sense. If I don't start practicing 4 to 5 hours every day now, I shouldn't even start. So I'm not starting now because I don't have the time. So I found this very cool video from Soul, and I want you to just, check that out. She has a classical background. She makes very cool YouTube videos, and I found this video very helpful. And I'm just going to talk about the 5 points that she had, but then from the perspective, from my personal perspective, and maybe also more from a jazz perspective, because stuff is of course different. So first of all, she starts to say that we should write down a reason why we start again. So for example, a reason could be, if I practice, I have a better mood. Or if I practice, it makes me happy. Or if I practice, I can connect with other people and play with them. Or maybe even like she says in this video, which I find kind of cool, I could practice so I can maybe post something on social media, maybe a 1 minute long thing. That can be also motivation. Also always talks about writing down stuff, which I can only also say it's so good to write down stuff, get stuff out of our head, and it's on the paper, and that it's different already. So that's the first thing. Why should you practice? So I have my very personal reason. Can tell you what it is. I often feel like an imposter. So I have been studying jazz guitar, playing a lot of concerts, but sometimes I feel like, who am I to say anybody to do anything? That's just like a general feeling that I have. And that gets very strong when I don't practice. I also feel very strange to talk about to students that they should practice, or making practice plans or anything, if I don't practice. But the minute I sit down and practice, and even if it's for 10 minutes, I feel like now I can talk about it because I did something. So for me, it's taking the action that gets me out of all those thoughts. Point number 2 that she says is accept discomfort, right? Like when we sit down and we feel like our fingers are not trained well enough, we have to understand, in the classical world, of course, people play long pieces by heart, super fast runs and stuff, and they have to really nail it, because if they play a wrong note, that's different. We can use that note to make something beautiful out of it. If in a classical piece somebody plays a wrong note, everybody knows it, right? And that's really can be a disaster, sort of. And so, of course, you have to have your skills in place. That being said, jazz musicians are very virtuosic as well. And she just says that one of the biggest reasons that we might refrain from starting again is that we dread that feeling, how that feels, and that we just accept it, that that feeling is going to be there, that we feel like, oh man, nothing is working. In my case, it's especially right and left, and the synchronization stuff. This is the first thing that I lose after some days. Might not be possible to hear that immediately, but I can really feel it, right? Like the motor skills have to be very refined if you want to play jazz guitar, I find. So she says, like, you know, accept that you're going to feel like it. And also one word that she said is like, if we don't practice for a long time, we also don't have the stamina to practice. And I remember when I practiced like 4 hours a day, that was normal for me. And also this act of sitting down and sitting on this one chair and just really playing one thing over and over. You can train practicing long stretches of hours as well, right? Like you can train anything. You can train reading a book, you can make sports, you know. Whatever it is, you can train that, and you can also train to practice for long stretches of hours. And if you didn't practice for a long time, we'll have to get back into that feeling. And I always recommend starting with a 10-minute spot. And when you start, choose stuff that is not so hard to play, that's a little easier, right? If you have been playing Donna Lee, maybe start now with Afternoon in Paris. If you have been playing Body and Soul, maybe play in a sentimental mood. You know what I mean? Just like a little easier so that you have like an easy entrance point, because I feel like when we don't practice for a long time, we get so upset maybe that we think now when we start to practice, we have to cram everything in this practice session to make up for the time we've lost. So maybe to take the opposite route and just to say, no, I'm not going to do so much, not so long, but a short amount of practice time, and I'm really going to practice something that's easier. So yes, she talks about the non-disruptive plan, meaning having a small time slot, like 5 minutes. And also, you know, one thing that she mentioned, what I really liked, is to have your coffee, your morning coffee with 5 minutes of piano practice. So I'm thinking if you have a routine or something, a habit that you always do, maybe you can like habit stacking, you know, one habit and connect it with another one. So if you have maybe a coffee each morning and you read the newspaper, maybe instead drink your coffee and play 5 minutes of guitar. And she also said what I really like is to say, even if you feel immediately like you want to play longer, to not do that, but to stick with the 5 minutes every day. And I've been thinking about this concept of, you know, printing out a calendar, putting it on the wall, and then making a cross each day for the 5 minutes that you practice, so you can see your success. And I really start to write down even more stuff than before, and I can really feel how that helps me stay connected. Also, you know, we all work so much with the computer, but if you have a printer, print stuff out, print music out, so that you can scribble on it. It really makes a difference. Another thing that I really liked, she said we should like, or we could like, work on etudes and exercises. So I wrote some etudes and exercises. For a jazz musician, I think an etude could also be a jazz transcription. But if we're talking about exercises like scale patterns and stuff, she said like it doesn't come with the baggage, because like, you know, if you practice a tune for a long time, all the thoughts and everything that you lived through with this tune sort of hang on to this tune, and so some tunes can get heavy. I have students that hate certain tunes because they connect with things that happened while they were improvising, for example, or because they're having trouble with certain parts of the tune. If we practice an exercise that's free of the baggage, so that's a really good way to start. And then she says, like, pick a small segment of a thing that you want to work on. Of course, we're not playing 40 minutes back, but maybe we have a solo transcription that we have been practicing in the past, and maybe we come back to it. And you know, I have all the PDFs here on the Patreon channel. You just can Google PDF and then you can print out a transcription. And here are some examples that I really like. The Pat Metheny song. Here's a really nice lick. You know, this could be an excerpt that you practice only this one phrase. Or here are some chords from Kurt Rosenwinkel. Just like, you know, take this one thing and master this thing. Or maybe here Chopin's a chord Gilland, like I like to say. But the idea is to just like, you know, take out the overwhelm and just like really practice this one thing that's so much fun. And then again, the idea can be to record this piece of music for your social media if you want to write. It's a good challenge. You can hear yourself and then you get started again. So never give up, and I can assure you, if you have been playing an instrument at any point in your life, it will always make a difference to somebody who never played an instrument. And most of the skills that we had come back after a short amount of time. So we have to sit through this feeling in the beginning, and then we come nearer to the joy of making music. And the trick that really works for me is always to have the timer on 10 minutes and just like play one thing until the 10 minutes are over. And most of the time, I'm already hooked at the end of the 10 minutes. So see you around. Bye.